What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Nick Saban is about to address the media, getting set for this year's SEC championship game. The Crimson Tide are a big underdog to Georgia. What does that mean? I'm sure he'll be asked about his former assistant, a guy that was the defensive coordinator for Alabama, as the Crimson Tide try to be the first team to knock off Georgia, who's won 29 straight. Bama was lucky to get by Auburn. What does this mean? Well, to me, it means everything's stacking up for a pretty good Saturday in Atlanta. Thanks for being here, guys. Again, be part of the channel, like and subscribe, and let's hear from Coach Saban. See what he's got to say. All right, let's bring him on to the stage. There he is, Mr. Chad Anderson. What's up, Chad? Roll Tide.
Yeah, Roll Tide.
Hung out a lot with you lately here.
We've had quite the hours on this channel. It's been fun, though. Been a lot of fun.
It's been fun. We've been reprimanded for our language a few times, but if that's what happens when if you beat Auburn, I think we can all excuse a little bit of language, right?
Look, here's the deal. If you weren't dropping bombs on Saturday night when Bond caught the pass for the touchdown, you're lying. You're just lying, okay? You're just a liar.
You're not a real fan. You're not a real fan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I got my Nick Saban camp shirt on, football camp shirt on right here, because he's about to school everyone in this press conference, right? What do you expect him to say?
He'll talk about it was a tremendous win. The team showed a lot of resiliency. The team didn't play their best, but fought, and good things came out of it. And then, he'll focus on Georgia and talk about how it's a great opportunity for this team and what they've done and what they've evolved from early in the year. And then at that point, he'll talk about Georgia being the best team in the country. And, it'll be a tremendous challenge to try to win, but the SEC championship, he said it before. He thinks it's one of the greatest games in all of college football. The venue, the atmosphere, generally the team you're playing, the best conference in the country. Remember, the SEC has 5 teams in the top 13 of the AP poll.
Wow.
So, this is the conference of conferences right here. And Alabama has a chance to win their 30th, Mick, 30th SEC title on Saturday.
Yeah. When we were in school, we won in 99. That was a pretty big deal. I remember losing in 95 to Florida. I had it kept losing to Florida, and then 99 beat Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then obviously it played Florida again, 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And then, since then, it's, kind of been like this hodgepodge. But the games against Georgia and Atlanta have been classics. I mean, all of them that I can remember. You got the Hurts game, which was tremendous. Amari Cooper had that game. That was amazing. So I'm guessing that this one's going to kind of fall in the line as one of the classics, because both of these teams are so good.
Yeah, they are. Aaron Murray was running his mouth on Twitter the other night. Still, I went back and read some more later of him. I'm just like, what are you doing, man? Like he started attacking people who had like Christ follower in their bio on Twitter and saying like, oh, you really look like a Christ follower. So I'm like, dude, like you are cringeworthy now. Like with some of your comments. And Murray, he's just mad that he never beat Alabama. That 2012 game, that was for the national championship, because that was one of the final BCS games, the next to last BCS championship. And we knew whoever won Bama, Georgia was going to go kill Notre Dame. And that's what happened. And that was the game where Aaron Murray got lit up. It was really a blindside block. Like it was a hit, just like they did to Burnip to be honest with you. Like, it wasn't a good hit. Like, I think it was Dial.
Nothing to be proud of is what you're saying.
Yeah, and he was wearing a crimson jersey that day, or maybe it was white, but you get the point. So that was brutal. But I just don't get it with Aaron Murray. But anyway, yeah, these games, Bama had a little dry run there in the mid 90s where they were good enough to get there, 93, 94, 96, but they never could get over the hump with Florida. 99 they did. And then Bama didn't go back until 08. Played Florida again. It's like you always played Florida for 20 years. And then it switched over to playing Georgia a lot recently. But Alabama just in this spot, it's one of those games, man. Like, they've got the players, they got the athletes, they got the 4s and the 5s all out there. They just got to put it together, because probably Georgia is a slightly better team, but at the same time, Bama's so good, and this team has done so much and is so special. They've got a great chance to pull what Vegas would call an upset on Saturday.
Yeah, and they're like the spread's going up, man. I mean, the last time they played in the SEC championship game, it was like 5.5. It's up over 4.5 now. So, kind of moving in that same direction.
I love it. I love it. It pisses them off, Mick. It pisses them off. I love it. Keep going. Keep running. Keep going up, man. That's one of those external factors that Saban will say, "Oh, we don't pay attention to it." BS. I think they do. I don't know that they sit in the Malmore Athletic Facility and watch the line movement all day, but you can't tell me that those guys aren't using it as motivation.
Yeah,
the disrespect, the whatever. Now, somebody brought up a good point, though. I forgot who it was on Twitter this morning. They made the comment that, hey, Georgia may start to feel disrespected, because all anybody keeps talking about is, what do you do with a 12? I think it was Tom Abraham, honestly. Like, what do you do with a 12-1 Alabama? Everybody keeps asking that question. What do you do with 12-1 Alabama? What do you do with 12-1 Alabama? And it's like, Georgia may be getting to the point they're like, hey, why do y'all keep asking this scenario? Like, we're the number 1 team. We're the 2-time defending champ. And that's a good point by Tom. Like, it can kind of work both ways if it keeps going in the one direction there with all the hypotheticals.
Yeah, no doubt. It's one of those things where, and I'm about to take us over to the Malmore building for Coach Saban. But it's one of those things where you look at it and you go, this is kind of a situation where it's do or die time. And Nick Saban's been in these spots before, and the team always seems to do well in this spot.
Yep. Yeah, he does. They always have them prepared. So Saturday was classic 2021. You go there, weird stuff happens. You set yourself up for disappointment. You pull it out. But Bama has no problem getting up for games like this. So, I fully expect Georgia to get Bama's best effort, and obviously Georgia's going to be hyped as well.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's going to be awesome.
So he's about to hit the stage. I hear him coming. There he is.
Here we
go. Good. So when I went to church yesterday, the first thing I said was, thank God what could have happened didn't happen. So, we did, I think it's just reviewing this game, a little bit of a reality check. One of the things that we wanted to do in the game was channel our passion and our energy into positive execution on the field. And I think when we did that, we played really, really well. But there were some times where we didn't, and it was very costly in terms of some of the errors that we made, whether they were penalties or mistakes on defense or whatever it might be. So the reality check part comes from taking the good things and building on them and getting some of these other things corrected. Having the opportunity to play in the SEC championship game is, I'm very, very proud of this team for the progress that they've made, the work that they've done. To give themselves an opportunity to play in the SEC championship game. This is one of the most competitive, best venues, in college football. And we're obviously playing, one of the best teams in college football, if not the best team in college football. Kirby's done a fantastic job there. I mean, I don't think people realize, how hard it is to win 29 games in a row or even be 12-0 in a season. So um, they got really good players. They're really well coached. They're one of the most prolific offensive teams in the country in terms of yards, points, ability to run, ability to pass. They've got good players at every position. Defensively, they're the number one team in the SEC. Got good players, well coached, do a really, really good job. And um, they also do a great job on special teams. So they've got good specialists. And this is a team that doesn't have a whole lot of weaknesses. That's why they are who they are and what they are. And it's going to be really important for us to do, a great job of executing and do what we do the best that we can do it.
Yeah, 2 years ago, similar circumstance, emotional win over Auburn. Then you're playing the SEC championship game against Georgia. What do you think these guys can learn from the way that team prepared and handled their business in between the Iron Bowl and the SEC championship?
I don't really know. I think this is about this team, how they prepare for this game. Um, Not very many guys on this team was on that team. Some of the guys were on that team, uh, understood, what championship preparation is really all about. And I think their leadership and our message is going to be that's exactly what we need in this game. But it's hard to draw comparisons from people who didn't have that experience, sometimes. So, um, hopefully some of the older guys on the team will be able to give us the leadership that we need to be able to get that message across.
Yeah, coach, when you look back at Jermaine Burton, what maybe stood out about him when he entered the transfer portal, and maybe how has he grown and matured since then?
Yeah, well, Jermaine has done a really good job for us, and we continue to harp on consistency and performance, all the time. He's been very productive for us, and um, we played against him, and we thought he was a good player when we played against him, so that was probably the reason for our interest in him to start with, and he hasn't disappointed us with his performance on the field, and we continue to work on his ability to stay focused on, do your job well, create value every play in terms of what you do, and be consistent in your performance. And he's certainly made strides in that direction.
Caden Proctor got named co-SEC Freshman of the Week. How have you seen him most improve this season?
Yeah, well, he's, we talked about him, on several occasions about developing confidence. I think in what he's supposed to do, how he's supposed to do it, why it's important to do it that way, the improved communication in the offensive line, I think has contributed to that development of confidence. And I think that's the one word that, when you have success, which he has had more success in recent games, that really helps build confidence and an expectation that you can do things at a high level. And that's how you prepare and that's how you go play.
What are the challenges of preparing for a guy like Brock Bowers? And then do you just kind of, Kirby said yesterday, status is kind of day to day. Do you just prepare as if he's going to play
I'm sorry.
Brock Bowers for Georgia?
Yeah. Well, Georgia's got a really, really good offensive team. And the quarterback obviously does a fantastic job of whether they're running the ball, carrying out fakes, play action passes, drop back passes. I mean, he is very efficient and effective in everything that he does. He's very accurate with the ball. He's smart, throws at the right place. So he does a great job of implementation of exactly what they want to do. And they have a really, really good scheme. And obviously, Brock Bowers is a really, really good player, probably the best player at his position in the country. And, I'm assuming that he will play in the game. I don't know any different than that. And he's a mismatch issue, but he's also a good blocker and a really good competitor. So it's not only his pass catching ability, it's his ability to do all the things that really good football players do, and he does them at a high level.
Coach, everyone knows about the Iron Bowl rivalry, but this Georgia-Alabama rivalry is turning into something every year bigger and bigger. How healthy is that for the game of football? And obviously, the Kirby and your connection adds to that as well.
Well, I think that, all these sort of, you call them rivalry games, some of them are instilled in the culture, like the Auburn game, the Iron Bowl. That's part of the culture. People have been watching that game for how many years? And it's always going to be that. And then, some of these other sort of rivalry games, as you call them, aren't traditional rivalries, but because there's two really good teams playing, and it's been historically that way for a while, um, they become those kind of games. And, that's kind of what this has become. So, you know, you don't get an opportunity to play against a team who's won, 29 straight games very often, which speaks to their quality, but it also speaks to the challenge and the opportunity that, our team has in preparing for a team like this.
A question about Georgia's passing game. So Lad McConkey, of course, missed September with a back injury. Took him a couple weeks after that, I think, before he was in peak form. And that's right when they lost Bowers to the ankle injury. So they've only had those guys healthy together for like 2-3 games. How much more dynamic is Georgia with both of those guys healthy?
Well, both those guys are really good players, so obviously they're very dynamic. But I will say this, that the players who have played for those guys, because, and this speaks to the depth of, Georgia's team, Four is a really good tight end, and has done a really, really good job. One, 86.5, the other receivers that have played, they've always done, they've done a really good job, and they're really, really good players. So, um, those two guys are fantastic players in their own right, and they're very productive. But the players who have stepped up and taken their place have done a really, really good job as well.
You mentioned you mentioned Caden earlier, but the whole offensive line's kind of improved. No pre-snap penalties over there. 1 sack allowed. How good of a job has Eric Wolford done, kind of turning around that unit and
Yeah, he's done a fantastic job, and I think the players have responded well to him. And our technique has gotten better, our communication has gotten better, the continuity of playing together has gotten better, and I think the results that we're getting is, showing that. But I also think this is probably the best front they're going to go against all year, to this point. So it'll be interesting to see, how that matchup sort of transpires.
Hey, Nick, Jalen Milroe told us post game that he thought his emotion sometimes got the better of him, but at times it feels like that emotion fuels his play. How difficult is it sometimes to walk that tightrope of playing with emotion, but making sure as the quarterback that you're dialed in and making the proper decisions?
Well, I just think that for any player, probably most importantly a quarterback, because you have the ball every down to do something with, whether it's to hand it to somebody, throw it to somebody, run it yourself, whatever. It is what I mentioned earlier about having passion to play and not getting overly emotional where you don't make good decisions and choices, whether it's because you put pressure on yourself or you're trying to make plays or whatever. Everybody wants to make plays, but everybody's got to trust and believe in, if I do exactly what I'm supposed to do on this play, that's going to give the best opportunity for this play to be successful and for us to make plays within the system and the scheme. And for the most part, we've been doing a great job of that, So, but it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, and this not just the quarterback, but we sort of, when we got a little emotional in the game, whether it led to penalties or poor choices and decisions in some cases, um, that's not really putting your passion into what you have to do on the field to execute. And I think sometimes when you get outcome oriented, which you know, sometimes when we want to win a game really, really bad, you get outcome oriented. That sort of leads to those kind of emotional sort of surges that can create some issues as a competitor.
What has impressed you the most about Jalen Milroe's growth this season?
Well, obviously Jalen has played really, really well for us. He's got a lot of confidence. I think he's got a really good understanding of what his role, what his job is, how he's been able to execute it on a consistent basis, whether it's as a passer or as a runner, whether it's scrambling or design run. He's done a really, really good job, I think, of playing one play at a time and trying to execute that play the way it's designed so that he distributes the ball in a very efficient, effective manner. And I think that's how his growth, you know, has sort of occurred and, you know, transformed him as a player and really transformed our offense as well because of his growth and execution. All right. Thank you.
All right, there you go. Coach Nick Saban, as always, on Monday. Chad, sadly, I think this is like our last Monday for a while, right? Because there wouldn't be a game next week.
I actually wondered about that, when his press conferences are or what they do after this week. I wasn't sure either. So, but yeah, I mean, this may be the final Monday press conference for a little bit. Before the bowl game or the postseason, you know, whether it's a bowl game or the college football playoff. But
hey, think about this. Next Monday, there'll be a lot of questions that'll be answered.
Yeah, we're 6 days away. And so it's real simple. Here's the deal. You lose Saturday, you get ready you basically pray that you don't play Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's, in my opinion, the goal. If you lose Saturday, you pray you don't play Tulane because nobody gets excited about playing Tulane.
You're
an old school SEC rivalry there.
Yeah, right.
Nobody cares. Right. Hey, do you know the last time Alabama played Tulane?
Let's see. I want to say in the 90s at some point.
So they did play them in 92 and they beat them 37-0. But they actually played them in one of Saban's early years in Tuscaloosa. I want to say it was 09. It could have been 08. Bob Toledo was the head coach, and Tulane came in to Tuscaloosa. Bob Toledo was the head coach of Tulane, and he was the head coach of UCLA when Alabama went out to California and got beat in the Rose Bowl in 2000.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So you tie it in a little bit there, but yeah, that was the last time I think it was. Saban's actually played them in Tuscaloosa. It had something to do around a hurricane too, because I remember the story of Saban going into their locker room and talking to them about, you know, the way the team came together in adversity, and it took a lot of guts to still have a season and so forth. But
yeah, maybe 2011 then.
But yeah, anyway, I just remember Tulane coming in, but you know, that's the goal. You still end up in a New Year's Six bowl. Hopefully a good quality opponent, and it's fun. You know, there's been some rumors about playing Penn State or Florida State or, you know, Oregon even on a couple of sites.
2008
what happens, huh?
2008. Yeah, 20-6.
Yeah, it was a low scoring game. I remember that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's what will happen Saturday. Either you lose and you hope you get a big name opponent in a bowl game, or you win and none of us sleep Saturday night and we all argue and complain. And apparently I'll watch my mouth since it's 12:20 on Monday. But we'll all piss and moan all Saturday night, and then we'll wake up on Sunday and just be biting our nails and seeing what's going to happen. So who knows? But the committee could either get off scot-free, or they could have a really, really difficult Saturday night, Sunday morning.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that's the case, because Alabama beating Georgia would be something that would disrupt everything. Last time these two teams played, Bama had the lead in the fourth quarter. And then you remember Jamison Williams got hurt. They didn't have anybody to catch the ball. Georgia ended up winning 33-18. And that was the first time that Georgia had beaten Alabama with Kirby Smart. 1-4 against Alabama. The Crimson Tide has ruined seasons for Georgia, beat them in the SEC, beat them in the national championship game. And over the years, Alabama's had success against Georgia, 42-26-4. And a lot of those games were for, big stakes because they don't play a whole lot. I think to me, the one that stands out the most is, well, obviously the Tua game, but what really sent Alabama into the elite status was a game I went to, 2008, another 2008 game. And it was called the Blackout. And the reason why is that all the Georgia fans wore black. And that was really going to intimidate everyone. And then they barked at us when we were coming into the stadium. And there were hardly any tickets. We sat way up in the top and then watched the stadium get cleared out as John Parker Wilson kept throwing passes to Julio Jones, and Alabama won that football game. Now, that was Mark Richt and not Kirby Smart. But Georgia didn't have to play Alabama last year. I think Bama belonged in the college football playoff. I thought they were one of the 4 best teams last year. I know they lost twice, but it kind of felt like this year. It's unbelievable to me that Ohio State wouldn't go all the way back behind everyone that's kept winning. They're not better than Alabama. They're not better than Texas. Oregon hasn't beaten anyone, and they're ranked high. You got a lot of people on this committee who are tired of seeing Alabama crush the competition. And that makes me nervous about the possibility of how this thing could shake out. But with that said, Alabama's just got to stay focused, and they've got to get ready to play Georgia. They can't worry about that because if they do and they lose that football game, it's not going to matter. And I'm sure that's what the committee would love. They would love Georgia to win so that they don't have to figure it out.
Yeah, then it's easy. There's no stress if you're the committee at that point. So we'll see what happens. But that's what I was talking about earlier. The committee wants Georgia to win, Michigan to win, Washington to win. Because then you got 3 that's no big deal. And then the 4th spot is going to go to either Florida State or Texas in that scenario. And that'll be the argument. Which team would play a better game against Georgia? Florida State with a backup quarterback, or Texas playing at full strength with their only loss to Oklahoma, and Florida State with a backup quarterback and going through the ACC, and Texas went on the road to play Alabama. But nobody would care. You wouldn't hear the big argument over 4-5 in that scenario. You'd have some people pissed off and screaming and yelling, but the chaos is what could cause the big problem. And that's when you end up with a situation of Georgia losing, and then Oregon beating Washington, and then Florida State remaining undefeated, and then Texas with 1 loss and Alabama with 1 loss. And then there's a lot of people who sit here and go, well, wait a minute. Are you really telling me that Georgia isn't a top 4 team?
Well, I've heard
they
that.
lose to Alabama?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, but that would be a nightmare for the committee, because they would, they would almost be begging for an 8-team playoff just for this year, just to be able to settle it on the field. But and then there's some Ohio State fans lurking out there still complaining about, we can get in, we need this to happen and that to happen, and look at our strength of schedule and all this stuff. But they're pretty much out without just absolute pandemonium. So we'll see. But the committee is praying for the easy path.
Yeah, they're 10-5 in these games. And the last time Alabama lost in the SEC championship game, 31-20, 2008 to Tim Tebow.
And
Can
Bama
you believe
had the
that?
lead going to the 4th quarter.
Yeah, they weren't prepared to win that game. Since then, 2009, 32-12 over Florida. 2012, 32-28 over Georgia. They killed Missouri in 2014, 42-13. 2015, Jake Coker and the gang took care of Florida 29-15. 2016, crushed a crappy Florida team. 54-16. 2018 was the 35-28 game where Alabama beat Georgia. They beat Florida again, one of the great SEC championship games, by the way, in 2020, 52-46. And then Alabama jumped on Georgia and just beat the crap out of them, 41-24 last time they played in 2021. So yeah, been a pretty good run for Alabama in the SEC championship game. Florida's the only team to beat them.
Yeah. Well, and Nick Saban does a terrific job, in these kinds of games, because you go back to his LSU days and remember won the SEC in 2003. I think it was Georgia they beat pretty bad in 2003. And then in 2001, Nick Saban and LSU upset second-ranked Tennessee, and they did it with a backup quarterback. I believe it was Matt Flynn or Matt Mock, I think it was. In 2001.
Matt Mock,
because Tennessee was going to go play Nebraska, Miami for the national championship, and instead that's how it ended up being Nebraska, who got just destroyed by Ken Dorsey and the Canes. But so Nick Saban doesn't really lose this game. Like, he's always locked in and zoned in. He's only lost it once, and in that year, Saban, like I said, he had the fourth quarter lead against Tim Tebow and the Gators, 20-17, and the Gators' depth and they made plays, and the athletes and everything. They were just too much in the end. Bama had a lot of freshmen on that team. Remember, Julio and Ingram were both freshmen on that team. And then you got a roster full of guys who didn't know how to win. They'd never been in that situation before.
Yeah. Well, Mike Johnson told us on a show once that the problem that 08 team had, and he was one of the All-Americans on that team and eventually a captain. I don't know if he was captain that year or not. I can't remember. But he said that the problem that team had in 08 is that their goal was to get to the SEC championship game.
Yeah.
He said after that, they realized the goal is to win the championship. And that was the focus of that team the next year. Remember, we went to the Sugar Bowl and lost to Utah, and our friend Barron, remember Barron caught that short punt kickoff.
Yeah.
He calls it the rumble in the bayou. He was like dragging guys. It was like one of the few highlights in that game for Alabama.
Yeah.
That everything just went wrong from the very beginning. Injuries and Mike got hurt and no one could block, and it was just a really bad game. But the next year, those guys came back motivated, and they set the tone for this program by doing that. See all of you guys in the comment section. Drop those comments. We're going to go through and talk about those before we get off here. But what do you think they can take from the game on Saturday to this game in Atlanta? And let me say something else, too. This is the final SEC championship game, in my opinion, as we know it. The significance of this game next year drops tremendously. Teams wanting to be in this game is going to go down a lot because you're not going to benefit from being the best team in this game. You're just going to be taking a risk of your status of getting into the college football playoff. This, in all essence, has been a playoff game, before there was a playoff. So, you almost need to enjoy this and everything that surrounds it, because I think eventually these games are going to be moot. I just don't think you'd want to play them. Now, the SEC is going to want to play them because they're getting paid, but at the same time, if your teams are beating each other to keep themselves out of this playoff, the real playoff, which goes to 12, then this game, I just think that this game, the significance of this game is going to go way down.
Well, to maybe better explain it even for people, think of this scenario. Let's pretend Louisville did not lose to Kentucky last Saturday, and Louisville's sitting at number 9 or 10 in the country right now. Okay. And then Louisville sitting, remember, 12 teams get in, and you have one that's a group of 5 champion that gets in. So you really only have 11 spots for Power 5 teams. Okay. Louisville's sitting at 9 or 10, and they go into championship weekend, and lose to Florida State. So, like, it does nothing for Louisville to go in. They should ignore the game, not play the game, because if the season ended, they'd be 9 or 10. They'd get into the playoff. If they go play Florida State, hypothetically, in the ACC title game and lose, then do they get bumped to 13 or 14? So if you're the ACC, you're now sitting here going, well, wait a minute. We get a lot of money by having this game in Charlotte. But if we do this, we could potentially eliminate one of our own and cannibalize ourselves.
Yeah.
And miss out on having 2 playoff teams. Now we only have 1. Which is more important? And I don't know the answer, but which is more important? I would think playoff teams.
Yeah, me too.
But that's the situation and the scenarios that will start coming up with these conference title games, because you're going to have somebody hanging out in that 8 to 11 range, and then they have to play their conference title, and then they could end up punishing themselves by playing the extra game.
Yeah.
So,
it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate this, right? Yeah. All right, let's go to some of these comments here. Brock, Roll Tide brother. I'm still honestly trying to pull myself out of cloud 9 after the way that the Iron Bowl ended. Joseph says that Chad's cussing is the reason why he's subscribed.
See? I've been trying to tell you, Mick. I've been trying to tell you. For every person that complains, Joseph is my guy. There's another one who enjoys it. All right.
Well, you didn't know that I was turning the feed on. It's not like you were like when I was. It was bad. I was just messing around. You were. You were lagging behind me as far as the feed. So
it was like a 2-second delay.
Yeah, I was screaming first, and then you were screaming. But we genuinely love our team.
Like I hurt, guys. I literally hurt.
Adam's throwing the flag on you for excessive profanity.
That's what my wife just wants to pick fights because he keeps talking about that in Chattanooga. Like Adam just can't quit talking
You're
about
defending yourself.
Chattanooga.
All right, see, Bama says Alabama, Roll Tide. We got to focus, man. We got to focus. Paul's talking about Roll Tide from North Louisiana. Bama by 6. Bama's a miracle team this year. This team has something, man. Paul, they have something. And I've told you this too, Chad. They really do have something. When you watch the way that this team has come together, they're not perfect, but you know what? Last year's team should have been perfect, but the effort on the field wasn't. They played scared. They made mistakes, and they weren't able to overcome those mistakes. These guys have, they have something here that the team last year didn't have. And I can't tell you what that was, because we sat around and waited for 2 of the best players that Alabama's ever had to make plays. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. It's a different hero each week, Isaiah Bond. I mean, would you have thought Isaiah Bond would be the guy that we're all calling for the Isaiah Bond, Daniel Moore print at New Life Art? But he made the great catch. And then I saw him after the game, and he's like, I always think of myself as a playmaker. That's what I do, I love the confidence. Roll Tide. Lori says, Roll Tide. Steven says, Roll Tide. Roll Tide right back at you. Mamba Milroe got to play his best December 2nd. I think he's going to. I just think he's going to. But they've got to help him out. And if Chase McClellan is hurt, then it's got to be somebody else. Roydell Williams has to have a big game. Then, they're going to need some help from maybe Jam Miller, who Baron Huber told us he absolutely loves. Kind of, reiterated that. We had a call after one of our shows last night with Baron, and he talked to us for a couple hours, and he just kept saying that he liked the way Jam Miller does a lot of things. Maybe this is the game where Justice Haynes, they need him. I mean, don't forget, Najee Harris had one of his best games in the national championship game without a lot of playing time, remember? And then he just broke out. So at this point, those guys aren't freshmen anymore. So if it's not McClellan, I'm guessing that it's going to be somebody else.
Well, McClellan, we don't know if he's going to play. He was in the boot coming.
That's what I'm saying. He's day to day. I don't think he's going to play. I wouldn't rely on him. So now it's 5.5, huh? So there's so many different books, but yeah, I mean, this thing's going. you know, the money's all going on to Georgia, which I'm actually fine with that, because
Sure.
every week I've been, you know, for like the last like 8 years, I've been doing these like pick shows, and we talk gambling all the time. We're sponsored by Pearl River Resort. I love it. But what happens is when you see things trending in one way, it goes the other way. I don't know why that is. I think what happens is, like Nick Saban says, it's rat poison. Do you think anybody in Georgia's complex thinks they're going to lose to Alabama after watching the way that Bama struggled? But you know what? We kind of fell for that same thing watching New Mexico. You know, who would have thought that after playing and getting your ass beat by New Mexico State, that you would come in and play that kind of game? You know, all the counter running plays and just what Auburn was able to do. I didn't see it coming.
I was worried about it. You knew they were going to give you the best shot.
Yeah.
You knew you were going to get their best shot.
Bruce says, is there a chance that we get a Bama-Texas rematch in the playoffs? I would absolutely love to see that.
It would be great. I would love to play for the Natty.
Oh, it'd be great.
I don't think they could rematch in the first round. I don't see that.
Right. It'd have to be for the national
Yeah,
championship.
because I think if Michigan wins, I said this the other night, I think if Michigan wins, then they're in as the one, right? And this is all assuming Bama wins. So Michigan would be the one, because they're not losing, guys. They're not losing to Iowa. So then if Oregon won, then Oregon or Washington, to me, would be the two. Florida State needs to lose, I think, still to make it easier, of course. So then if Texas won the Big 12, like the committee would just keep it easy. You could argue and complain about it, but I think in that scenario, it'd be Michigan 1, winner of Washington, Oregon 2, Texas 3, Bama 4. So you'd have to have Bama beat Michigan and Texas beat the Pac-12 champ to get a rematch. But that would be fun. The only thing that would suck, remember the Natty's in Houston this year.
Yeah,
So
I'd go there.
Playing the Horns in Houston, though, that's
yeah, I hear you. It'd be like a home game.
Yeah.
How do you think the committee has any bias on Alabama being in or not? I just feel like these guys are tired of seeing Alabama. I really do.
Could be.
You know, it's like they overvalued the loss and they undervalue all the wins. And I felt like that last year. I mean, it was obvious to me, even at 2 losses, that Bama was better than, you know, TCU. And then all the same people were like, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like after, you know, Bama destroyed the conference champion from that conference, and TCU got absolutely just beaten down by Georgia, which they would not have done that against Alabama. And it's like, oh, well, you know, they won, and they won because Alabama lost 2 games, you know. But at the same time, if the criteria was to have the best 4 teams in, we didn't have the best 4 teams in. The fact that they've got the Ducks ahead of Alabama and Texas, for that matter, to me is a sign of that bias. When the Ducks haven't beaten anybody, you know, they don't play in that conference isn't as good as we thought they were at the beginning of the season. And besides that, the SEC has grown and gotten better. I mean, all you got to do is look at the talent that Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee and the teams in the SEC get on signing day. And when you lose the number 1 and the number 3 overall pick, it's going to take you a couple of games to get it figured out. But the committee and honestly, the AP and the coaches poll haven't given Alabama any credit for that this entire season. You know, they love to push them back when they lost and then they didn't play well against South Florida. If they played those same teams now, they would beat them without a doubt.
Yeah, they would.
So
they would.
That's just my opinion on that.
My biggest frustration is still the out of conference thing, because that's what Alabama did. Is they went out of conference, scheduled Texas. Oregon decided they were going to have Portland State, Hawaii, and Texas Tech on their schedule, and here we are. So super frustrating. We'll see tomorrow night's show, which, by the way, you guys should join us for that. If you don't, if you haven't done it yet, you should, because we get a little fired up on that one too, because just Oregon makes no sense to me. There's nothing about Oregon on paper that makes sense. So it's all simply about the eye test with Oregon, which, you know, whatever. Because the problem with the eye test is it's so subjective.
Right.
Like you can there's nothing black and white about the eye test.
So what do you think? I mean, you would just have Alabama up to what? Because there's great points. People are like, hey, look, you know, you did lose to Texas. How do you go ahead of Texas if if you lost to them? Well, first off, the loss to Texas is still, to me, a better loss than losing to Oklahoma, who's lost a bunch of games. You know, even though Texas won head to head, they've gotten worse and Alabama's gotten better. I mean, and over the course of time in history, lots of times a team that lost to another team in a game is still better than that team in the long haul when you look at the full body of work. You know, I mean, beating Ole Miss and beating LSU and, you know, as tough as it is, beating Auburn, you know, all those games matter. But you know, this is a year. I have to say this for the first time, and we'll find out what happens on Saturday. But it's the first time I really feel like that if you had at least an 8-game playoff, you'd have 8 good teams getting in. I think what you're going to find out is that there's not 12 teams that are deserving. We're going to put 12 teams in, and the first round's going to be, a lot of blowouts. But this year is different. I mean, this year is really different. And this could be the beginning of college football in the NIL era too, where you just, the teams that that have good rosters go and spend a bunch of money and get transfers and fill in all those holes. And then all of a sudden you have just a big crowded group of good teams at the top. I don't know.
But what would you rather have? I mean, would you rather have, let's say, I don't have my notebook with me, but some of those matchups, for example, like, would you rather have Ohio State playing Tulane in the Cotton Bowl when it means nothing and people are opting out and the game's watered down? Or would you rather have Ohio State host Tulane and beat the hell out of them, but it's a playoff game? Like, we all get it. There's really, if you look at it, this year is a bit of an anomaly. But in years past, there's only 2 or 3 teams that are really national championship worthy.
Right.
Like, it would be Bama, Georgia, Clemson in years past, or Bama, Clemson, Ohio State. A lot of times, just you saw for a while there, for a little 6-7 year window, you saw like the same 3 to 5 teams just kind of rotating through who would win the national title or appear in the championship game. And then you'd have blowouts and stuff, and everybody would kind of be like, oh, the semifinals are stupid because it's a blowout or whatever. Like, okay, but I'd still rather play for something. And this is almost a little bit of an answer to some of those bowl games, because you get into the opt-out stuff. Bama has not done that when they've played like Kansas State last year. They actually played their starters.
Well, that's because of Nick Saban.
Don't. Yeah, that's Nick Saban. Other schools don't do that, though. Like USC last year against Tulane, Caleb Williams played, but I think they had 1 or 2 of their offensive players opt out of the game. So I don't know. I would still rather, and I know what you're saying, like sometimes the product is hyped up and then it's, oh, great, a 30-point blowout. Like, how much fun was that? But I still go, hey, I'd rather them play a 5-12 game or a 6-11 game and have it mean something versus, just the bowls. I used to love the bowls, but the bowls have now become kind of like, because everybody's gotten to that opt-out point.
Yeah, which started when they went to the 4-team playoff. And then all of a sudden the playoff became, hey, if we're not in that, then it's not worth playing. And when Alabama loses Nick Saban, I wonder if we're going to be one of those programs where you get into, if these bowl games even exist, if you get into a bowl game and it's not the college football playoff, you see everybody opt out.
I get that. Like, I used to be the guy, and I still am, where Andrew Luck, I always use him as the example. He went back to Stanford for 1 more year before he went to the NFL. He could have come out, been a top 5 draft pick, maybe the number 1 overall, stayed at Stanford 1 extra year. And I'm just sitting here going, my God, man, like, you are about to lock in on millions upon millions of dollars.
Yeah, you don't want to get hurt, right?
Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. Don't have a bad year. Don't have a gruesome injury, whatever it is. and it still went that way. So it was just, I don't know. That's always my thing is you could come back later. So I get it, it's business decisions, but it still sucks for us as fans.
Yeah. I mean, that's what kind of ruins the entire system, so and the coaches and the universities are going to want to keep pushing, and the TV networks to expand this playoff. I just don't think they're going to be satisfied at 12. And then it turns into the NCAA where it's like, well, 64 teams isn't good enough. Now we got to have 68 teams, and then we got to have a play-in to get into the play-in. And it just gets to be like, I mean, if you don't make the tournament, you're terrible. What we're going to lose, and I've said this before, is we're going to lose the value of the regular season, just like we lost the value of the bowl games as this expands. But as long as ESPN can find something to put on their network that people actually like watching, which isn't their content anymore.
That's pretty bad.
I know it's gotten so bad. There was a time when, I had to watch Sports Center every day. And by maybe part of that too, is that you could just go on your app and, watch highlights. But, and I feel like a lot of this is pushed by the TV network, but I don't know. I'm kind of worried, man. I mean, like I see, I've heard people say, Tom Abraham said on the Tailgate show a bunch that there's no way Alabama wins. What did he say? By no way, shape, or form, Alabama beats Georgia and doesn't get in. The problem is there's a lot of scenarios where I think that they don't get in because the committee has kept them back at 8th for so long. If all of those other teams win, are you going to just leapfrog them ahead of everybody else?
Yeah. I mean, it's just going to be a weird weekend, man. It may not be, because it could just be as simple as the favorites win and we move on. I did see somebody post the other day what the odds are of all the favorites winning, not covering the spread, but just winning
the games outright.
Yeah.
Money line.
Yeah. Money line parlay. And it was 2.8 to 1 plus 280, meaning if you risk $100, $280 plus your original 100 is given back to you. So that's not great odds. That seems to indicate a chance of an upset when you have 5 games being played,
right?
And you're only getting plus 280 on a 5-team money line parlay.
Yeah.
Like that indicates that odds aren't great. So we'll see. I was relieved by that because odds makers know what they're doing.
Well, before we get out of here, let's talk about this. The championship game. First off, we're going to finish with the SEC, but I'm just going to bring up these other championship games. First, Michigan is playing Iowa. Iowa, there is no chance that Iowa is going to beat Michigan. Michigan could play their 3rd string and beat them. Have you seen those guys? Like they can't score. I mean, it's amazing that they're even in this game. They're like 10-2, and they beat they'll beat Minnesota by like 2 points or Indiana by 3. Like Michigan crushes all of those teams. They got shut out by Penn State 33-0. Like they're not beating Michigan. So I'm going to go ahead and put Michigan in and tell you that the Big Ten is overrated again this year.
Iowa won't score, guys. Like they just won't score.
Yeah. You got Louisville coming off of a loss to Kentucky, playing a wounded Florida State team. Is there a chance that they could come up with a win?
Louisville can, for sure. Louisville's the best chance for an upset. I'll let you go through the rest of the games, but Louisville's the game to watch. So it's going to be a fun Saturday, to be honest, because I don't anticipate Texas losing. Texas plays before Bama. I don't anticipate Texas losing. Oregon and Washington play Friday night. So if Bama wins, then you're jacked, you're pumped, you're on the edge of your seat. But now you instantly turn to Charlotte for Florida State and Louisville. Louisville's got a shot. Everybody's kind of doubting them now because they got beat by Kentucky. But Louisville has the defense, and Jeff Brom's a good enough coach. They can pull that one off.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. I mean, that you feel like that's one where you might have an upset. Now, I would say for Alabama, the game on Friday night between Washington and Oregon is a huge favorite in this game. And I think if you're Alabama, you got to have Oregon win. You just have to. You want them to win kind of a mucked up game where they don't look great, but they win. And then that gives both teams a loss, just because then all of a sudden you start weighing in one-loss teams and you're like, well, they beat Washington, but Alabama has a stronger strength of schedule, and they would have beaten a Georgia team that won 29 straight.
Yeah. Yeah. And Bama's got to have Oregon win to stay in the conversation. If Oregon doesn't win, if it's Washington, which that line is the most surprising of all to me, it's 9.5 in favor of Oregon. The last I saw anyway, but Washington winning secures the Pac-12. Undefeated Washington's in. So you need Oregon in or to win so that you have the argument as a one-loss team that your resume is better than theirs.
Yeah. So we're all big Oregon fans. Let's see. Then you got the ACC, the Pac-12. Is there any chance that Oklahoma State could beat Texas? The final game for Texas, you got to figure those officials, they might go get those same officials that Alabama had at Auburn on Saturday and have them officiate against Texas, which would not surprise me, right? And you guys, and I got to tell you, you guys are awesome. I love somebody gave me a list of all the effed up stuff that the officials missed against Alabama in the football game. Dude, it's a pretty good list. Of mistakes. Burton making the catch they caught back. 3 guys moving at one time. It's just like a bunch of stuff. The kicker, the guys should have got a personal foul on the kicker. Whatever. Mediocre Mark says Bama winner is 100% out. Dude, I hope you're right. I really hope you're right.
Yeah.
And look, we could be worried about nothing. If Alabama beats them, it's going to be such a colossal win that even the haters are going to have to say Bama's one of the 4 best teams, right?
It's just going to be interesting because if you watch the whole hypothetical stuff, they say, well, what if this happens? What they've been doing that for a month now or 3 weeks. And now you're down to the final week. So there's only so many scenarios. Before it could be like, well, Florida State's got to go to Florida, then they got to play Louisville. Georgia's got to do this. Texas has to do this. Oregon has to do this. Washington may lose at Oregon State. There were still 3 and 4 games left on the schedule. You're now down to 1 weekend. There's only so many scenarios here. So I'm really curious to see tomorrow night what people are going to say about Alabama, because again, you're going to have teams in front of Alabama who are going to play each other and they're going to lose. So we'll see what they talk about. But I don't know. I'm not as confident as you guys. I think they're looking for a way to keep Alabama out, to be honest.
Yeah. Adam says 100%. Adam, if Alabama beats Georgia, he's going to be walking in to work on Monday feeling so good about life. We're making Georgia out to be like this juggernaut. Alabama has always played them well. Even if they win, it's going to take them playing their best game, to beat Alabama. So there's nothing, there's nothing guaranteed for Georgia.
If this happens right here, if that happens and they pick Alabama, I want a Danny Cannell cam.
Well, Florida State's the team. Florida State's the team that if you're picking the 4 best, they're the worst of all the teams.
They're the worst of the 8 without.
They're the worst of the 8th, right? Without their quarterback, and they just keep barely getting by. And then but if they kept them out, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. That would be crazy. All right, but you're a fan of the mullet. You've been back in the day, that was a haircut that you definitely loved, Chad. In your wilder party days, but you've always been kind of, I'll party a little bit, but I'm also serious, which is why you love the mullet. Could the mullet beat Texas? Could the mullet beat Texas? That's the question.
I love how you're the Floribama guy where the mullet toss actually takes place.
I've actually had one. back in college.
But then he comes at me with it. I think
I'm projecting.
Yeah. of the top 7 teams, because I don't count Florida State in this. Anybody can beat anybody, which is cliche, but this Bama team is just not as dominant as Nick Saban teams in the past. Georgia, I think, is beatable. Michigan is good, but not elite. I don't see anybody. We talked about this earlier, 20 minutes ago. Used to, you had 2, 3, 4 teams that were always, hey, it's going to be one of these for the national title. That's it. But this year, I legit think the top 7, any of them could win the Natty. And I leave Florida State out of that group because I don't think they can with a backup quarterback. I know 2014 and Cardell Jones and all this other stuff, but this Florida State team is not that Ohio State team.
Right.
So I think of the top 7, literally anyone could win the national championship as it stands right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's putting it out there. But Oklahoma State, could an Oklahoma State team that got dismantled by South Alabama, could they beat Texas?
But I don't think so.
Texas doesn't have the running back. They're not the same team that they were.
Doesn't have a defense.
Yeah, that's true.
They don't have a defense. It's more Texas's defense beats them. Talking about the mullet. Yeah. It's more Texas's defense beating them. So it's
going to be crazy. What a week we have, though. Tomorrow we're going to do we'll watch the official college football playoff, ranking show. Do we know is it 6:00 again? Do you know?
I'm pretty sure.
Or is it? Hopefully it's
check, right?
Yeah, please do. Because if those guys do it in the halftime of the basketball game again, I'm not going to be happy. I didn't like that.
There's no more classics. That's a once a year.
Yeah, come on, man. Like this isn't. It's not like they have so much great programming that they can't find the spot for it. Take off one of those shows where you got the talking heads that none of us watch and put this on because it's actually something we're interested in.
Tomorrow night, 6 to 6:30.
Okay, so we'll be back. I love it. I love it. Yeah, we'll be on. We'll get on a little early and then kind of sit here with you guys on that. We'll get back together for Saban's Wednesday press conference. We'll be at the Bama Friday for the tailgate show. We'll have the post-game show Saturday, and then we'll do some pop-up videos as well. If anything breaks, we'll keep an eye on Chase McClellan and the health status of Alabama. I think Georgia's banged up. They had some guys sit out against Georgia Tech. But, just get ready for a war on Saturday. It's going to be great. Another thing that you guys got to get ready for is if you want to, to make a move here in the near future, Chad can help you do that. This house, his mortgage company, is the mortgage company that we used. But Chad and I did broadcasting together at Alabama back in the day. And then also, just have kind of teamed up on different shows and stuff over the years. But where his real expertise is mortgages.
10,000 families helped in 13 years. So we don't do that because we suck or by accident. So it's one of those things, guys. Like, mortgages are annoying. They're complex. Like, I always make the joke when you buy a house, the realtor gets to do the fun part because they get to show you the house and let you visualize and dream what it's going to look like. I have to do the crappy part because I have to ask for documents to get you a loan. So we always make the joke like I put you in debt. But we do enjoy doing it. We make it pretty painless and seamless. Mick's been a great testimony for us. So, if you're in the market for that, or you want to look at, unfortunately in this economy, credit card debt is the highest it's ever been in this country. And 1/3 of all mortgage applications this year have been for cash out refinances. So if we can help with that as well, you may not realize it, probably save you a bunch of money each month on your budget, consolidating some of that unwanted debt. So anyway, phone number is below. That's literally my cell phone. It'll ring straight to me, or there's my website if you want to schedule a meeting or a chat, whatever's good. Love to help out if you want to.
I'll add this. I'd never bought a house growing up. We didn't really own houses, So going through the process, I had no idea about any of it. Like, I learned how to do all of that stuff working with Chad. But the cool thing was he kind of knows all the ins and outs. And sometimes there's some ins and sometimes there's some outs in doing this stuff. And we kind of hit them all to get my house. So, if you guys, if you're interested in figuring out, you just say you get a new job and you got to move, or you need more space, or you need less space, or whatever, at least give Chad a try. Plus, he's an Alabama guy, so that'll help you out as well. You get a Roll Tide from him. Thanks for hanging out with us here. We heard from Coach Saban. Make sure that if you're not part of our channel, that you like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Share. For those of you guys that have hit us up in the message board, man, we love hearing from you guys. Keep those messages coming, and Roll Tide, everybody. Getting closer to what I think is going to be a great Saturday in Atlanta. And if you're going to the game, make a lot of noise. All right, we'll talk to you again soon. Roll Tide.